I'm Claire. If you're watching this and you know anything about me, then you might be thinking that something looks a little different today. And if you don't know me, then you're probably not thinking that. And all you really need to know is that I have no clue what I'm talking about, but I'm going to talk about it anyway. Today, we are going to be talking about baseball again. Now, I know you're probably thinking, not again, I can't listen to her complain about the Giants again. Well, guess what? You're in luck. The Giants tragically missed the playoffs, just barely. So this is the last you'll hear of them this video. Today, before the divisional series starts, I wanted to take a quick look at the playoff picture. I want to talk about the wild card games that were finished just last night. I'm filming on Friday after the end of the Mets-Brewers series. So I want to talk about the wild card games, and then I want to talk about my predictions for the playoffs. Let's start with the wild card games. Specifically, the one I didn't really have much of a stake in. To be fair, I didn't have much of a stake in any of the wild card games, but let's start with the one I had the least stake in, and that would be the Mets versus Brewers. Pretty exciting Game 3, actually. The Brewers looked like they had it, and then Pete Alonso hit that massive home run that knocked the Mets into the divisional series. Exciting game. Good for the Mets. Honestly, it was a pretty evenly matched series. Both teams looked good, and the Mets just came through when it counted. That's all I can say, Hopefully they do well against the Phillies. I would rather see the Mets in the NLCS than the Phillies, although that's not saying much because I would have rather seen the Brewers in the NLCS against the Phillies. I just don't want to see the Phillies in the NLCS. But now let's move on to Tigers-Astros. Thank God the Tigers won. It really annoys me, really frustrates me, that the Astros have made it to the playoffs every year since 2017 when, as maybe you know, they cheated. It really annoys me that they have not quite seen the consequences of those actions. So I'm always happy when the Astros are eliminated early in the playoffs. As for the Tigers, I don't have any strong feelings towards them. Congratulations to them. And that's all I can say. Thank you for eliminating the Astros. Now let's talk about the two wildcard series I actually did kind of care about. Every year, the Giants miss the playoffs, which is a lot of years. I arbitrarily choose a team to root for at the beginning of the postseason. And it's usually based on some tenuous connection to the team, like really tenuous. So for example, I'll root for the O's because my dad really likes the O's for some reason. Or I'll root for the Braves because I have a lot of family in Atlanta. So naturally, both those teams got swept. Didn't even make it interesting. Got swept in the wild card series. Which means I now have to choose another team to root for, arbitrarily. If you couldn't tell, that team is Cleveland. Why did I choose Cleveland? Honestly, I visited Cleveland for opening day. It was a great time. I saw an eclipse, and that's it. That's the entire reason. I don't know anything about Cleveland baseball culture. I'm purely a bandwagoner. So now that I've told you who I would like to have win the World Series, let me tell you about my ideal postseason outcome. I am the type of person who, when I don't like a team, which is often, if we're being honest, I would like them to be eliminated as soon as possible because I just don't like entertaining the idea that they could possibly win everything. Now, obviously, I'm rooting for the Guardians to go all the way, but it would be nice if the Royals could beat the Yankees in the divisional series so that I don't have to see them in the ALCS. And on the National League side, it would be really great if the Padres could take the Dodgers out early. I know that the Padres have a tendency to choke in the playoffs. It does not help that it was just announced that Joe Musgrove is going in for Tommy John surgery, which means, he probably won't be pitching in the NLDS. But if somehow the Padres could find a spark of brilliance, that would be really nice. I would then like them to lose it to the Mets. I'm not that much of a fan of the Padres. And it would hurt to see an NL West team win the series this year. So, yeah. So if the Padres could knock out the Dodgers and then lose to the Mets, that would be great. But that's not going to happen. Especially now that I have put it out into the universe that that's what I want to have happen. Honestly, teams should pay me to root for their opponents. They're not doing that, but they should. In all seriousness, let's take a look at what I actually do think will happen in this playoffs. As you can see, I do still have the Guardians going all the way. Is that based on any super complicated analytics? Not really. No, I didn't have time to do that before this video. It's just more of a gut feeling, I do see them beating the Tigers. Frankly, I don't have high hopes for many of the wildcard teams. And then I think that the Guardians are strong enough to beat both the Royals and the Yankees. Definitely the Royals, but also the Yankees. Speaking of the Yankees and the Royals, I am actually pretty excited for that series. I wasn't alive for this, but in the late 70s and early 80s, the Royals and the Yankees faced each other a lot in the ALCS, and they hated each other. There were a lot of dirty plays. There was one time there was the George Brett, Greg Nettles thing, where George Brett slides into third, and Greg Nettles kicks him in the face, starting this massive brawl. Fun to watch. So I'm really hoping for some of that energy for this NLDS. It might be too far after the initial hatred for them to still have that animosity, but a girl can hope. But in the end, I think that the Yankees will take it. Maybe 5 games seems right. I don't see the Royals. I don't see the Royals really playing well enough to take out the Yankees. Not a Yankees team that has Aaron Judge and Juan Soto on it. But I do see a Guardians team taking out the Yankees. Something interesting about the Yankees this season is that while they had a really good away record, they kind of struggled at home compared to other teams in the playoffs. And, I mean, the Guardians struggled on the road compared to other teams in the playoffs. But that means that they're pretty well matched in home and away games, because the Guardians did really well at home. So, honestly, I see that going 7 games. I see it being a tough series. But in the end, I do think that the Guardians will have the edge on the Yankees. Let's jump over to the National League, which depresses me a little. Whatever. Unfortunately, I think that the Dodgers are going to the series this year. It pains me to say, but it's pretty obvious that they're the strongest team in the National League. I don't think it's going to be that close with the Padres. I think the Padres are going to choke, and again, doesn't help that Joe Musgrove is out. And, you know, whether the Dodgers face the Phillies or the Mets, they're going to beat either the Phillies or the Mets. They're better than everyone else in the National League. It's not even interesting to dissect. They've got a stacked roster. If they choke early, then Dave Roberts needs to be fired. Caveat to that is that Dave Roberts should have been fired years ago, but if they choke early on a team built like theirs, Dave Roberts should be fired this year. So instead, let's talk about the other NLDS series, the Phillies and the Mets. I know the Phillies ended with a better record than the Mets. I know the Phillies are better rested because they did not have to play a wild card series. I still think the Phillies are going to lose. And I say that because at the end of the season, it looked like they were fading a little. Earlier I mentioned that the Brewers and the Mets were evenly matched, more or less. The Phillies, in the last stretch of the season, lost 1 series to the Brewers and 2 series to the Mets. If they continue with that pattern, they're going to lose a 3rd series to the Mets. Except this one will actually count. So yeah, I think it will be the Guardians against the Dodgers in the World Series. And I think the Guardians will take it. Partly because I have to believe that as a Giants fan. And partly because the Dodgers always choke in the playoffs. And it's a beautiful thing to see. Or, I'm completely wrong and the exact opposite of my ideal scenario happens. And you have the Tigers beating the Guardians, the Yankees beating the Royals, the Yankees beating the Tigers to go to the series, and on the other side, Phillies versus Dodgers, with Dodgers ending up in the series and the Dodgers winning it all. That would suck. Wouldn't be a fan. Might have to root for the Meteor. Anyway, I'll check back in after the divisional series when all of my predictions have turned out to be false, because I have no clue what I'm talking about, especially when it comes to baseball.